Time to finally leave slots. In app view, I'm going to remove all those components I've been using thus far, except for the header, because I now want to clean up the UI. I will leave the files here though for reference. But now let me quickly create two brand new components here, which have nothing to do with this dummy code we used before. Let's say we have a manage goals.view file and an active goals.view file. Manage goals could be a component where the user is able to add new course goals, and active goals is a component where all added and active goals are displayed. We're not going to add all the logic for that though, because I want to show you something else. Therefore, I'll keep it simple and just say active goals here in the template of the active goals component so that we can recognize this component. And in manage goals, I'm going to add a template where I say manage goals. I'll not even add script tags here. I'll not export a default config object, because if it is empty, you don't even need to export it. It will, so to say, be exported and created for you automatically behind the scenes. You then don't need to define it if it is empty anyways. So you can have components with just templates like here, and now we can add them as local components in app view. I'll import active goals from components active goals.view, of course, and import manage goals from /components manage goals.view, like this. And then register both as local components here, in this case, active goals and manage goals. And now, of course, that shouldn't be a surprise, we can use them here. Active goals can be used like this, and manage goals can also be used like this. And now my build process here is complaining about the fact that I have components registered which I'm not using. So let me actually remove batch list user info and course goals from here, and also comment out those imports then here. So now this rebuilds, and now we can see active goals and manage goals on the screen. Now that's certainly not too exciting, but here's the cool feature I want to show you. Vue has this concept of dynamic components, and here's where this could be handy. Let's say we're building a component that has various tabs, so various buttons in the end, which we can press to show a different component, so that we either see active goals or manage goals, but not both at the same time. For that, we could have our tab buttons here, active goals, and then another button where I say manage goals. So I have these two buttons, like tabs here, and when I press a button, the respective component should be shown and the other component shouldn't. Now here's how we could implement this. We can manage some extra data here, selected component for example, and initially let's say that is active goals. So the HTML tag name, which we are also using here in the DOM, active goals. And then we add a method here. So we add the methods key, and in there add a method set selected component, where I get the component as an argument, and then set this selected component equal to the value I'm getting here as an argument. And now we can bind this method here to the buttons. So here, upon a click, I want to call set selected component and pass in active-goals. And on the manage goals button, upon a click, I will call set selected component and pass in manage-goals as a value for the parameter. So these are now the buttons. And now that we can change the selected component, we can add the if here on these two component tags and check if selected component is equal to active goals here, or here on the second component, if selected component is equal to manage goals. And if I now save that, we can use this like tabs and we can switch between these components. But that's nothing new. Here we're only using features you already learned about. Now, whilst you can build it like this, if you have more and more components between which you want to cycle, using VIF all the time and repeating that VIF code all the time is pretty annoying. That's why Vue has an alternative way of doing that. So let's comment out this here and let me introduce dynamic components to you. Vue offers you a special HTML element which you can use, the component element. This is an element, a component, provided by Vue. And the interesting thing is that this component won't work like this standalone. It doesn't show anything on the screen. Instead, it needs one key property, and that's the is property. The is property tells component which component of all the components you defined should be shown in place of this component. So for example, we could set this to active goals. But of course, we don't want to hard code this, because if we did, we could just use active goals like that, if we would always show just that component. Instead, what we want to do here is we want to bind is dynamically with vbind or with the shorthand. And then in this case, point at selected component, which holds our component HTML tags as values. It's active goals initially, and in our method here, in the end, we switch between active goals and manage goals, which are our component tags. And with that, we're telling Vue that component should basically swap itself for either active goals or manage goals, whatever is currently stored in selected component. So with that, if I reload, I got the same behavior as before, but now with less code, without multiple VIF statements, which of course makes our life as a developer easier and means that we have less code to write.